Thank you for joining this Global Rational User Community webcast. My name is Susanna Spear, Community Manager. Today's webcast is titled Rock and Roll Will Never Die, but the Spreadsheets for Requirement Management Will. Our presenter is John McDonald, CEO of CloudOne. John McDonald serves as the CEO, Chairman, and President of CloudOne, the first company to offer SaaS and virtual private cloud delivery of IBM software products. Before his work there, he was an executive at IBM, serving in various roles in IBM's software group for over 20 years. John earned degrees in Management, Information Systems, and Computer Information Technology from Purdue University in 1992 and 1995, and lives with his family near where he grew up in Indiana. We will be taking questions for John from the audience, so please submit your questions via the chat applet on the right side of your screen. Additionally, you can follow hashtag GRUCDOORS, GRUCDOORS, on Twitter and continue the conversation there. Submit questions and comments. This webcast will be recorded and provided along with a copy of the slide deck in the Rational Community Resource Library. Please keep an eye out for a follow-up email once that is available within the next day. If you are having technical difficulties, please attempt to reconnect. Without further delay, I'd like to hand it over to our presenter, John.
Well, good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for dialing in today and listening to our webcast. This is John McDonald, and I'm joined on the line today by some members of the CloudOne team who are here to ensure that if any questions need to be answered, that I don't mess any of that up. So that should be fun to do. So let's talk a little bit about why we're here today. The point of our webcast is to share with you all a little bit of a story about a guy named Joe. Joe is one of our favorite people to talk about here at CloudOne. Joe is, in fact, a project manager and an analyst for a company called Schmidlap Guitars. It's kind of an odd name for a guitar company, but Joe's a pretty cool guy and likes to wear these glasses around. In fact, what Joe does in his spare time is he's actually in a KISS tribute band. That's him there on the right-hand side in the picture. And, you know, like any good band, collaboration is pretty crucial to his success as a rock and roll star. Coordination between the different members of the band, getting feedback from the audience, incorporating what he gets back from the audience into their set list. And, of course, like any good band, if you make a mistake, that's the difference between a good gig and a bad one. He's got a major advantage, though, in that his tribute band is all together on the same stage all the time. They live local, so they don't have to worry about miscommunicating or anything. The problem is, for Joe, it's not really like that at work. He's got teams all over the place. He's got clients all over the place. Seems like he's dealing with one crisis after another. He spends a lot of time trying to explain to other people in his organization what it is that he does and what's going on with his projects, and doesn't really ever seem like he's reacting to things that are going on in the market. He's always sort of trying to catch up to everything, and he wonders, why in the world can it not be at work like it is with my band? And this is a picture of a typical day for Joe. He gets a message early in the morning saying that, we just rolled out this project with a critical component missing. And so when he starts to try and figure out what happened, he goes back to the guys who tested the product and says, look, we followed this document. Here it is. Here's the proof. And then he goes back to the people that built the component, and they said, no, we did the same thing. Look, here's the document we use. We can prove it too. So he goes back to his document repository and looks around and spends most of the day sifting through lines of Microsoft Excel, only to discover that the real problem is that the two teams were using different versions of the document. They were both working on documents, just not the same one. So now he has to pull together a team of people to fix the problem, And now he's got a whole other team of people to manage as they try to mitigate the changes and the issues that came up from the miss, and that means he's going to miss another critical requirement. This is why Joe's life is so awful, and that's mostly because he's got a set of things that he's not doing very well. He's using Word for managing his detail requirements. He's trying to track defects and changes in Microsoft Excel. He's spending a lot of time writing macros and editing them to assemble progress reports from all the line items that he's working on. A little while back, the company invested in Microsoft SharePoint to try and address this collaboration issue, but the truth is it's kind of not much more than an overblown file cabinet. So nothing is really traceable. Everything is manual, and the truth is that's very costly stuff because every time they need to make a change, they need to create a new team, they create a new set of documents, a new set of merges that have to happen, they have to set up a new SharePoint environment, and all that is very time-consuming and really very expensive. So I want to ask a poll question at this point in the program. Can you relate in any way to Joe's frustration? So on your screen, you've got a choice to make. You can choose whether or not, yes, you in fact think that collaboration is quite difficult, or no, we actually already have processes that help me to collaborate perfectly. I'm going to give everybody just a minute or two to click the button, and then I'll share with you the results as they come in. In the meantime, we can tell you a little bit more about Joe. Joe actually started off in college as a project manager, and got his degree in organizational leadership and in management. And he started work straight out of school at the guitar company because he loves rock and roll, as we all do. But quickly got pulled into the different projects because he was really good at what he did, and unfortunately so good that he keeps getting dumped on all these problems over and over again. So let's see what everybody says here. There you go. 85% of you say yes, collaboration is always difficult. No, I have a process. Got 15% of the votes. No surprise. Overwhelmingly, you guys can relate to Joe's problem. So let's go back and take a look at some of the solutions that might help Joe in his issue. And that is, Joe happened to come across the fantastic DoorsNG.com and the even more fantastic Doors Next Generation product that's part of DoorsNG.com. And suddenly there's a few things that have started to become a little bit different about Joe's life. Specifically, he's got 6 key things that he can now do that he wasn't able to do before now that he's got plugged into this technology. The first thing that he can do is that all of his requirements and all of his project management is now secure, central, and accessible to everyone involved in the project. He can now prioritize and visualize his business needs before he even begins the project of putting together all the requirements, a very critical first step that's often missed at a lot of companies and dive right into the requirements before figuring out what are really the business drivers and the process that's driving it. Now all the members of his team can edit concurrently each individual requirement line item and put together automatic version control of the different versions of sets of requirements. If he needs to link together different requirements in order to trace the dependencies between those things, which is important, a feature of any requirements regime, he can now do that very simply and easily with a click of a mouse. And of course, the days are now over of him putting together reports using macros or manual cutting, pasting, because all the reporting is built directly in. And last but not least, Joe now has the ability to use standard templates and reuse them over and over again, not only for his industry, manufacturing, but also in any sort of process that he chooses to use as a part of his project management. So let's look at each of these things in a little bit more depth. So from a secure, central, accessible location, if you try to do that in Microsoft SharePoint and ask yourself the question, how do I securely and easily collaborate with my other team members, it's not that easy to do. SharePoint is really a general purpose document sharing system. It's fine for the purposes of sharing documents to be clear, but it's not tuned in any way towards the tasks of requirements management. Oftentimes, those SharePoint installs are internal to my firewall, which means that it's very hard to share those things, really impossible, with people who might be outside of my organization. And if the SharePoint server itself is in one location and a lot of the people that are working on the project are not, you might be subject to some pretty slow internal network connections to be able to get back to the documents you need. It's not very easily customizable. Even if I wanted to turn it into something that was very tuned to requirements management, it would be difficult to do so. And most importantly, it doesn't really offer any live collaboration on the document content. And so that is not the case with DOORS Next Generation. DOORS Next Generation is delivered by DoorsNG.com, is really an online, secure requirements repository that you can get to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all throughout the year. It's delivered in the form of virtual private cloud. And what that is it's a space that's sort of your cloud and your cloud only, which means you don't need to worry about any sort of internal IT resources to set it up, and you don't need to worry about any of your data being insecure because this cloud is yours and yours only. So only your data, only your configurations, only your projects go in it and no one else's. So think of it as your own data center just for requirements management, bolted directly into your network, which means it's always secure, always encrypted, not only in transit but also at rest. And it gives you the ability to include other people in the requirements management process. People like vendors or contractors or outsource employees or suppliers, so that you can keep everybody in your team, not just inside but also outside, completely connected into the project at all times. Let's talk a little bit about prioritizing those business needs. And if you try to do that in the normal mode, capturing and documenting the business drivers for a project, which of course, as we know, is almost always the first step to any requirement system, trying to understand what it is that the system needs to do, or the product needs to do, or the project needs to do. To do that in Microsoft Word and Visio is really just a box full of clip art. It allows me to drag and drop shapes and images and create arrows between them and label things so I can sort of capture what's happening from a business process perspective. But those diagrams aren't live. They are just pictures. And if I want to go into any detail behind it, I have to start writing a whole bunch of text, like a big book, in Microsoft Word to document each one of those steps. They're, most importantly, though, not connected in any way to the requirements framework. There's no automation in turning that model into a set of requirements for starting off on a strong framework. And it's also very difficult to reuse that set of documents and drawings for any new projects. It's sometimes mostly easier to start with a fresh, clean slate than to try and get any reuse. Of course, as you might suspect, for Joe, it's been a whole different world for him since he's moved into DOORS Next Generation, because built right into the tool, delivered right there through the web, right through your browser, secure all the time, is a complete business process diagram system. It allows you to draw workflows, to track changes, to move items around, but more importantly, it allows you to flow those directly into a requirements framework with just a click of a button. So far from being just a pretty picture of the world, it actually gives you the starter kit for your requirements infrastructure directly out of the business drivers that you've mapped. Even better is the ability to create multiple use cases, meaning that you can lay down the facts as they are today, and then if you choose, sort of peel off pages of the pad and try out different things, different use cases for different people, different teams, different iterations of a product, and keep the same base core and try out different models, all from the same sort of basic web pad. So pretty cool and easy for Joe to be able to create and visualize those business needs to start off with. Now let's talk about concurrent editing and versioning. How do you do that in Microsoft Word? How are you sure that the requirements document that your team is working on is in fact the right one? Well, in Word, simultaneous editing is not actually possible. It's not possible for you to take and open up a Word document on your PC and then have somebody else open up the same document on your PC and simultaneously edit each thing live. So that means that it's very easy for you to take the wrong version of the document and edit it, and somebody else to take it as well and edit it and get competing edits, which means that you need to merge all those changes by hand. And if for some reason anyone picked up the wrong version, then they're going to run off in the wrong direction, and now you're going to have to be bringing them back into the fold manually because they weren't looking at the right thing. And, of course, all the version control here is manual. We've all taken a copy of a Word document and saved it using a number or a numbering scheme or a date or version 1.2.3.4 so that we could keep track of what revision level we were at with the document. Well, that's not exactly the best way to do it. The best way to do it is how DOORS Next Generation does it, because what it does is it keeps every line of the requirements system completely separate and allows people to edit each line simultaneously, no matter where they are or who they are, depending on the roles that they play, which means there's never a situation where you can check out a set of requirements to one person and then to another one and then have to have some sort of competing editing going on. Furthermore, it's down to the item-by-item line, so that means that I can be editing one while you edit another, and we can be assembling that document together live in a collaborative fashion. All of the changes that are made are color-coded, so you can quickly see new requirements that have been added, things that have been modified since the last time that you've done work, or even reverse from changes that have been made before. And so that allows you to visually match and see complete requirement sets and also versions of requirements, so you can go backwards in time to previous sets of requirements, all built in directly into the tool. No extra need to write macros, no manual work required, all built in directly. So let's take a look about another key important feature of any requirement situation, which is creating linkages. Of course, we know that when we build requirements, we have to quite frequently connect one requirement to another to create dependencies, to create a critical path through the project so that people know that this leads to this and this leads to this other thing, and that this particular requirement is broken down into 5 more or 10 more or 100 more, all of which need to be met before the sort of parent requirement is met. How do you do that in Microsoft Excel? Well, manually is the answer. You have to take each particular line item and keep the referential integrity with every item manually. You're always reacting then to the changes and trying to fix and reconnect those links every time a change is made. And that puts you behind at every step of the way because you're never in front of it, you're always behind it. It's also impossible, really, to implement any sort of processes based on those linkages. So if you wanted to create sort of testing models based on the linkages so that this leads to this leads to another, there's no way to actually create that automated testing situation from Microsoft Excel. But as you can expect, this is probably a much better story in DOORS Next Generation, and boy is it, because to create a connection between two items in DOORS Next Generation is simply a drag and a drop. All you need to do is drag one to another, and it creates a linkage to the two artifacts, and it's done. In fact, you can create very complex relationship trees by linking and cross-linking items back and forth so that you have a very complex representation of very complex projects. But it also makes sure that every part of the framework is followed and all the dependencies are understood by everyone involved. You can even do some predictive analysis of where other downstream dependencies might come into play based on what you've been able to lay out. And probably most importantly, manage the scope creep on a project, which is, of course, a feature of any project that's going to sink underneath a sinking ship, is how much of scope creep do you get. And how do you do that? By looking at work items that have no dependencies. Things that are outside the critical path tend to be items that are not necessarily important to the project's core and therefore might indicate situations where you've got some scope creep occurring. Now, how about reporting? How easy is it for all the people that need to know what's going on to know what's going on? Well, again, in Microsoft Excel, not a great story. You have to create, if you want to do any sort of automation at all, you're going to have to spend hours creating and debugging Visual Basic scripts to be able to create the summary tables and to bring together different files and merge different items and create reports and pictures that you need. And unfortunately, because of all that work, it means that by the time you actually build all of those reports, you're dealing with data that's probably stale at that point because it was sucked into this process and worked over and not necessarily what's going on now while we've been working on it. It's also a very reactive approach to assessing. You're looking at data that is representative of what already happened, not data that's representing what's happening now. And therefore, you can never really be sure if you've got the right data plugged into what you're doing. But for Joe, he's got a different solution, and that's what's going on in DOORS Next Generation, and that's because that product allows us to create custom dashboards for every single stakeholder that's involved in the project, no matter what their role is or where they're located. In fact, when they log in, it instantly updates their dashboard to show them the latest information of what's going on. This allows everybody to react instantly. It allows everybody to keep everyone in sync. And it doesn't require any scripting. It doesn't require any programming. It's built directly into the tool from the get-go. And then how about industry templates for standards compliance? In other words, how do I reuse an existing project profile so that I can get started quickly with my new project? Well, in Microsoft Excel, it's a pretty easy answer. You can't. There are no industry-oriented templates. There are no templates at all for requirements management. It's literally a blank sheet of paper every time you open it. The best you can do is cut and paste things you did in past projects, but that's filled with data from those projects, not from this one. And so there's really very difficult to reuse and develop best practices around managing requirements and being a business analyst. And so this isn't the case for Joe anymore, because built right into DOORS Next Generation, in fact, the first thing that happens when you create a new project is it asks you to use an existing template. Templates that are built in, templates that you can create, templates that you can modify and customize for your own needs. So as you develop your own processes internally to your organization, you can codify them in project templates and provide consistency with either internal standards or standards that are related to the industry that you might be in. So this stuff allows Joe to manage his requirements like a rock star. It means that he's able to have one secure, central, accessible location for everything that he's doing. It allows him to quickly visualize what's going on in the business model underneath the projects that he's working on and set priorities and also try out different iterations of different approaches to the problem. It allows everybody involved in the project to concurrently edit each individual item within the project, and also keeps track of every change so that we can revert to any version level that we wish at any time. It allows me to quickly, with drag and drop ease, create dependencies between different items so that I can trace those items and make sure that they were met, and also represent complex trees very easily in the online world. It allows me to create automated reporting pictures, dashboards for everyone involved so they can see what's going on, an automated glossary creation for all of the different tags and information that's within the chain. And I can create my own templates or use industry templates to be able to provide all of the compliance that I need, both to internal as well as external items. So I got another polling question for you now at this point. We've gone through a whole series of tools, some IBM tools, some Microsoft tools, some others. Things like Google Docs allow you to manage requirements too. I know Excel is like Spreadsheet Online, but don't provide you the individual line changes that you need to have to keep everybody in sync. So I'm curious as to the tools that you use today to be able to manage requirements in your organization. Do you use Word? Do you use Excel? Do you use Visio? Do you use DOORS Requirements Composer? Do you use other tools? So on your screen you've got another poll, and if you click away, we can see here in a couple of minutes what everybody's using. I know some of the folks on the line probably are using traditional IBM Rational Doors today, and that's a pretty common thing, particularly if you're in the business of creating products, maybe medical devices or automotive components or aerospace components. And, of course, DOORS Next Generation is the newest release level and the new version of DOORS, and so you may have some questions as well when we get to the Q&A section about how those two worlds relate. And the good news is they relate really well, and there's lots of great things we can do to help you get started with Next Generation if you're a current DOORS user. All right, so the poll's up, and let's see what the results are. There you go. So 24% of you are using IBM Rational Doors in some way today. About 20% of you each are using Requirements Composer or Microsoft Excel documents to manage your requirements. About 11% of you are using Microsoft Word, and about 6% of you have no tool at all. So this will be a great opportunity for you to experience something new. So back to our presentation. Why online? You may be wondering to yourself, hey, I like these features of DOORS Next Generation, John, but why would I want to get them through something like DoorsNG.com? Well, the answer is that you can get it right through the web. There's nothing to download, nothing to install. You don't need any help from your IT department. You can get started literally this afternoon. In fact, just like Facebook, just like Salesforce.com, just like any of those software as a service tools that you're used to using, this is one too. And it's just as easy. And in fact, you pay for it just the same way you pay for those two tools, which is to pay as you go. In fact, what we're doing right now is offering a free 60-day trial, which means you don't pay anything for the next 2 months to try out DoorsNG.com. And when you're ready to go, you can start with as little as one person. You today on the phone line can give it a try and scale to whatever amount you need. And you know that it's a full service, backed 24/7, 365 by the managed services team at CloudOne. That means upgrades, patches, backup, and most importantly, security. It's constantly encrypted, both in transit and at rest. That's very important. A lot of times you see on the web, worry about security of data when it's stored in the cloud. And you know you're using secure encryption when you send data to and from the cloud. But what happens when it's in the cloud? Well, it's important to also encrypt the data while it's there. So even if someone's able to get into your virtual private cloud, which more in a minute on why that's so difficult, all they would get is a bunch of gibberish because the data is encrypted even when it's sitting there at rest. And it's delivered by CloudOne. Now, CloudOne, some of you may be, it's important to know that CloudOne currently services many of the world's best companies in their use of development tools and the use of project management tools, enterprise asset, big data management. These are just some of the companies that currently have CloudOne as a part of their internal delivery service for technologies and tools. In fact, if your logo appears on any of these on the screen, it means that you've already got a virtual private cloud in place, and that means you've got an even clearer paved path to getting DOORS Next Generation delivered as a part of a service. And about that security, that's pretty critical. There's actually 8 interlocking layers of security that are involved in DOORS Next Generation, in fact, in anything related to CloudOne. And sort of like tumblers in a lock, every layer of that has to be completely in sync. It's sort of like if one layer is not totally lined up, no one's getting past that layer any closer. And so that's the degree of security that we provide to our environment and provide to you and provide as a part of absolutely everything that we do. So look, here's what we need to do now. We need to go to DoorsNG.com and go sign up for one of those 60-day free trials. I encourage you to go try that out as quickly as you can and see how quick and easy it is to be able to try out DOORS Next Generation in a software as a service model, just like Joe, our favorite business analyst, who's now also not just a rock star on stage, but also a rock star at work. So now is shift gears a little bit to some questions. I think there's some questions that were already queued up on the Twitter feed. The Twitter feed is GRUCDOORS, #GruckDoors, if you've got a question to ask. You can also ask a question online in the window here. And if I'm not mistaken, we're going to get a few folks asking some questions from our moderator as well. Okay, I've got one question here. I'd like to see a demo of doorsng.com. Okay, that's real easy. Exactly all you need to do is go to doorsng.com and register for a free trial. Now, that's going to let you try it for yourself, but that's not all we've done for you. If you go to doorsng.com, you'll see we have a whole page on that website dedicated to information to equip you to be able to get started quickly. There's a guided tutorial there. There's videos and downloadable documents. We have also access to the Doors NG technical team at CloudOne who can sort of handhold you step by step through the process, some of whom are on the line today. And we're happy to sort of schedule a custom demo for you as well if you like. If none of that's good enough, we can even hold your hand directly, and that'll be fun. So we got another question. What level of encryption is supported? What level of FIPS 140-2? Robert, I'm not sure if you're on the line, if we can speak to our FISMA FIPS security level, or if we need to take that question offline. Can you hear me?
Yeah, John, I think
Robert?
we need to take that question offline.
Okay, so I think what we've got is some documents that we can send over that detail all of the standards compliance we have in the federal government space. We're also working very hard to become a part of the NIPRNet, which is sort of the internal intranet, if you will, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the federal government space, to make sure we have a great solution for Department of Defense related work, which is actually another question that I got. How easy is it to work and bring this into DoD level work? The answer is very easy as a part of the NIPR environment that is rapidly going online now to provide that secure, sort of blessed, immediate accessibility to services within the federal government space. Another question I got here on the Twitter feed is somebody requires physical access to requirements documents as a part of their audit process, as in, I'm assuming that to be paper. Do you provide a function to generate a requirements document using a client standard template? Yes, as a matter of fact, that is built directly in. You can create customized templates or use the built-in templates, and it will create PDF and Word documents for physical hard copies of every document that's in there. So if you need that for audit purposes or document retention purposes or validation purposes, that is also available. Another question we got online is how difficult is it to create a PDF snapshot of approved requirements? Similar answer to the question I gave before. It's very easy to export using predefined templates to both Word and to PDF environments, and that allows you to then send sort of uneditable status pictures of different sets of requirements as you go. So that's pretty easy and built directly in. Another question that I got online here is how easy is it to switch from Doors to Doors Next Generation? Well, it depends. Doors Next Generation was built with migration from traditional Doors in mind, which means that a lot of the data and templates that you use today will translate over very easily with very little to no adjustment. But one of the challenges is quite frequently companies have built a lot of scripting and complicated programming, really, around their requirements infrastructure in the traditional Doors environment. In which case, have no fear, there's still an answer there too. We have a services team here at CloudOne who have some of the best skills there are available in those migrations. In fact, we've also got relationships with great companies like Sodius and TaskTop and some other ones that allow you to get access to technologies that ease that migration as well. Boy, getting a lot of questions. These are really good. You can keep tweeting using GruckDoors if you want, GRUCDOORS, if you want to keep asking questions. You can also, it's a function directly in your webinar service here that allows you to also ask questions as well. Another question that I got was, I want to give a trial run, but I think this is going to be longer than 60 days. How much does this cost, John? The answer is we can provide you with pricing assistance just by emailing doorsng@oncloud1.com, doorsng@oncloud1.com. It's really crazy cheap is the answer to that, but I'm not allowed to say online how crazy cheap it is. So that means we have to answer that question for you directly in email. I want to make a mention while we're collecting some other questions that pretty soon we're going to have another follow-on webinar to this one, which is fantastic because so many folks are asking so many great questions, as well as so many folks online today. It's going to be a little more focused on how easy is it to ... meaning if I want to do this, if I want to do that, if I want to do this thing, how do I do that? Think of it almost like a tutorial kit, a starter kit course, a 101 course in DOORS Next Generation, which will allow for live feedback for you to ask your own questions beyond whatever we put together soon. So watch for that invitation in your email, and it'll be a great way to get started with the technology if you haven't already had someone from CloudOne handhold you through it, which, as I told you earlier, we're able and happy to do. What types of metrics can be generated and displayed on the dashboard? So, for instance, would it be useful for engineering managers to assess the health of their development at different stages? Yes, in fact, that's exactly what it would be good for. Robert, let me turn to you for a second. How much experience have you had in looking at the different dashboards and what can be posted on those front pages? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, let me hit two different questions that were out there that I saw floating around too that kind of go together. One was, does DOORS NG link with RTC, which is definitely yes and yes. So RTC is the long history of providing metrics for workflow. So what work you've gotten done, what work needs to get done to be able to tell the health of your process in your organization. DOORS NG builds on that. It's part of the same Jazz family of tools, and so it has within it a built-in set of dashboard widgets that allows you to be able to see exactly that, the health of your requirements, so how many requirements you're creating, and more importantly, how it relates to the other parts of your process, whether it's your testing activities, so making sure that all your requirements actually have test cases that cover them, as well as the tasks that are going on to be able to make sure your work gets done. So there are a tremendous number of useful widgets that allow you to get that first level purview into how your organization is operating, and then beyond that it has a data warehousing scheme that allows you to be able to extract additional details, additional metrics as you go forward, because oftentimes as you get deeper into it, there's personal metrics that make more sense to your organization and allows you to deliver what your customer expects when they expect it. So there's a wealth of information that's already out there, lots of stuff to just get you started, and then as your organization matures, you can grow with it, and the tool can grow with it, so you can make sure your team does what it needs to do when it needs to do it.
That's awesome, Robert. And a couple more questions came in along the same lines as you were talking. One of the questions is, how well is DOORS NG suited for the front end of the business? Elicitation and that sort of thing. Well, I will share with you that the DNA of DOORS Next Generation is actually a predecessor product called Rational Requirements Composer. In other words, previous versions included Requirements Composer, including this one. It's actually an amalgamation of many different cool functionalities being brought together into the DOORS NG technology. First of all, that's reassuring to know that this is not a 1.0 release of this product. You're not guinea pigs on a beta test here. It's code that's been around for quite some time, and some very large corporations doing some very big things in it. But it's important to note that because Rational Requirements Composers is built into its DNA, that was the original intention. One of the main intentions of Rational Requirements Composer is real-time elicitation in front of business users. And so you saw a little bit earlier in the presentation the business process diagramming functionality. That is just the tip of the iceberg of some of the things that are built into it to help you with that stage of the game. Not only being able to live edit and interact with the business users and the business sponsors what a system needs to do, but also be able to take in input and advice on different features and functions, weight those features and functions, put out for question and test the different things that might necessarily go into the business side of it. It's extremely good at that part of the equation because it's got those things built in from the beginning. Also, another question that we got is, does it support other connections to things like project management or task management? And Robert mentioned that a minute ago. DOORS Next Generation is built on the Jazz platform, which means that it has built within it not only a database engine that keeps track of all of the different parts of the process, it actually also has different faces that allow you to show that information to different roles within your environment. So for instance, there's another face called Team Concert, which you can read a little bit more about on doorsng.com, but Team Concert is really about managing work items, prioritizing those work items, stringing them together into project plans, visualizing those project plans, and sharing the checking in and checking out of work items with different members of the team as you move from more of a requirements mode into a more let's go work and build this thing mode. There's another face on it called Quality Manager that allows you to work with the testing of anything that you built. And the important thing about that is, because it's all based on the same engine, every test that you build now is connected directly back to the work items that were used to build it and directly back to the requirements that were used to elicit it in the beginning. So now you can make sure that everything that you're testing has a direct connection back all the way to the beginning to the reasons why the project even exists, and all that is built directly into the tool itself. Although, don't get worried about that. It's really good just for requirements, just for starting, and very cheap and easy to be able to do. So we've got a whole series of other questions that are online, and the truth of the matter is, I think what we're going to do at this point is kind of go to the closing thoughts and capture a lot of these questions and get back to members of the audience, because some of them, although I would love to answer them all real time, they're kind of flying in a lot faster than I can even read at this point. So it's pretty cool and it's fun. But we'll get all these answers back to every one of you. Thank you all for joining, and I encourage you all, as soon as you can, to go check out doorsng.com and go sign up for one of those trials and start putting your fingers on the keyboard of this fantastic technology. We've got a whole team of people here at CloudOne ready to support you in that journey, and a whole services organization behind that team here at CloudOne to make sure that anything that you want to do that's peculiar to your business, your industry, or your migration path is handled with the best talent there is on the planet.